All right, welcome in everybody. Super excited about this webinar that we're having today around B2B commerce and some common pitfalls that people can fall into when discussing B2B and looking at B2B e-commerce. And really excited about the guest we have today, Dmitry. So Dmitry, I'm going to allow you to introduce yourself. So go ahead and do that.
Absolutely. Thanks a lot for having me. I'm Dmitry Khan. I'm a solutions architect, and I've been in the e-commerce space for many, many years, probably closer to 20 at this point, and I've seen the industry evolving quite a bit, which is why when I spoke to my friends at KIBO and you guys have suggested, hey, let's do this together and talk about some of the experiences you had, I was so excited because my experience shows things that are so self-explanatory for us, having been in this for many, many years, is actually not that self-explanatory to the customers, to the clients of ours. And I'd love to help people avoid unnecessary mistakes.
That's awesome. And we love to do that as well. And so I feel like this is going to be a great conversation today. I'm really excited to have it. For those of you that don't know, Dmitry wrote a blog for us the end of October, I think, that we've got up on our website at KIBOcommerce.com that I think you should go check out. I'm going to cheat and read the name here because I don't want to butcher it. But the name of the blog is The Costly B2B Commerce Mistakes That Kill Digital Transformation. And it's an exciting read for those of you who are just kind of introducing yourself to the concepts of B2B commerce and, the things that are most common to trip people up. And I think you've got 9 of them listed there, the 9 most common mistakes. But then you've also got how you can avoid those mistakes. And I think it's a fantastic read. So I encourage everyone to go to KIBOcommerce.com and read that blog. Again, you can search for B2B, search for Dmitry's name. But the name of that blog, again, is The Costly B2B Commerce Mistakes That Kill Digital Transformation. So, Dmitry, I want to jump off from there because there's some really interesting things that you've gotten written in that blog post. And one of them really stood out to me. So we keep hearing about the B2C-ification, if we can call that a word, of B2B, right? But your blog post opens with a really startling statistic. So I think it was by 2028, only about 28% of B2B digital commerce is going to happen through websites, right? You also mentioned that fax machines refuse to die and that EDI still rules, as we all know. If you're anywhere adjacent to the B2B world, you know that it's still very EDI specific. So if the website isn't the main event, it's not the main thing, that B2B businesses should be looking at, where should those B2B leaders actually be focusing their digital investment?
I think they should focus on the customer, and they should focus on 2 key departments internally, and that is sales and operations, warehouse operations more specifically, because this is where a lot of information is actually almost concealed. So first of all, every B2B business is unique. Everybody has their own different model. Everybody has very different customer persona, and even the sales models are different. So there is no single recipe that works for everybody. It might be a disastrous thing for somebody to, let's say, mimic Amazon for business. I hear that a lot. Hey, just build it like Amazon. And Amazon is the synonym of great B2C experience. It may not work for you. So be careful with that type of advice. When somebody says the B2Cification of B2B happens in digital space, that typically means the way people browse the website, the convenience, the thoughtfulness of that experience. But that's probably where the similarities end, at least from my perspective, because so much in B2B occurs in the research phase, in the way the orders are being handled post-submission, because it's absolutely a normal thing. As a matter of fact, I wouldn't be surprised if my personal experience would say 75% of the merchants I work with are expecting to modify the order quite significantly after it has been placed, which is very much not the case with B2C, right? You expect it to be exactly the way you placed it. But B2B merchants reach back out to the customer with consultation, saying that, hey, we see that you've ordered something and those 2 things do not go together. There may be a fitment issue, or there may be something else that we know about your business. The types of projects, for example, you're running. If this is construction, that, hey, this is not going to withstand the temperatures in your region. or maybe it's not fire retardant product. So this kind of consultation just does not occur in B2C. And this is really the key to success, is being far more than just transactional with your customers. So auditing what the current process is, the whole customer journey, which does not end with placing an order. It continues all the way through the post-purchase, the fulfillment experience, potentially the returns, the ease of doing business with you, your net terms, the way the payments are being processed. This is crucial. And if we had to put one label on this, I'd call it order fulfillment, right? So this is where e-commerce still continues as a process. And it's a lot less highlighted in B2C space. It has a lot more prominent place in the whole deal in the business when you're in B2B.
Yeah, and that makes sense. You mentioned kind of um, being able to reach back out to the customer if there's a fitment issue or things like that, which is fantastic. You should be able to kind of flag those things and understand those. When somebody orders, a schedule 20 of one and a schedule 80 of something else, then that's not quite going to work. Not really anticipating, whatever that is. The other side of that, I feel like, one of the other big pieces for B2B is always going to be self-service, right? Self-service is a huge thing for B2B, but some buyers, they still kind of want to do things the old-fashioned way, right? We talk about EDI still being a huge thing, but you've got a lot of people out there that still want to pick up the phone, right? Or they want to, and they want to they send their orders in through fax or through email. Like I've heard stories of customers that will go to a vendor's website, find all of the products that they need, put it in an Excel sheet, and then send it in an email, right? So, how do you design an e-commerce portal that empowers those buyers to serve themselves without making them feel like they're being pushed or being abandoned, or they're still able to do business the way they want to and not being forced to adopt something wholly alien to them?
And I think you nailed it. Meet the customer where they are. So everybody, that's the first step. Define where your customers are, and there could be multiple personas with different needs and very different level of technical maturity, if you wish. So email is not going to go away. It might diminish in importance, but it is convenient in certain circumstances. When somebody is working off a spreadsheet and they're just populating it over the course of multiple days, it's just easy to drop that attachment into the email and fire it off to somebody they know really well because they worked with that salesperson for years. Or maybe they were engaged in a long exchange of emails, and it's basically the final kind of drop the mic moment. Hey, here's the attachment. Just go, send me this stuff. It's natural, it's organic. So whatever is natural and organic for your customers, just support the flows for that. But the purpose of the digital transformation is also to reduce the friction and operational overheads associated with that convenience. So emails require basically somebody downloading the file and then manually thumbing in the orders. There are ways to automate that, right? Yeah, even years ago, before the AI, you could build some automation with tools like Zapier. I'm not recommending it to anyone who operates on a meaningful scale, but there are life hacks, if you wish, that reduce that friction internally. A lot of things related to the order status. Has it been shipped? Is it being processed? Is it being delayed? A lot of nervousness is associated with the status of the order that has been placed because typically, first of all, it's somebody's job that's on the line. It's not personal conveniences, right? It is the manufacturing process could stall because the parts are missing, for example. So people naturally feel anxious about it. Give the tools to your customers that matter to them. For some of them, your website could be the portal to place the orders. For some of them, it could be a research portal. They would still feel far more comfortable placing the order over the phone, but they've done their due diligence and research online. For others, it's not even about placing the orders or researching the products. It's about tracking the order status. Some, and this was quoted in a survey as the most popular reason to visit the B2B portals, is checking the pricing. So therefore, make sure the pricing is relevant and real-time correct, not lagging like a month or a week behind your ERP. So define what your customers truly need, identify the pain points, and close that gap.
Yeah, all great tips. Absolutely. I wanted to continue down that road, but you just mentioned something that sparked as something in my head. Simple pricing was another one that you listed as a mistake. If a customer has negotiated contract pricing, tier discounts, and payment terms like net 90, how hard is it to replicate that logic online in real time?
It depends. And that's almost the answer for 99% of the questions about B2B. It depends on everybody's specific situation, but most of what I see, it's quite complex. It's quite difficult because B2B catalogs tend to be in the hundreds of thousands, if not in the millions of SKUs. And then if you're lucky, you might have like, say, 10 tiers of different prices. But many of the B2B businesses operate on rule-based pricing. So historically, there was an ERP system in which you generate a set of rules. For example, your purchase price is $100. So a customer gets a 10 or 15 or 20% margin charged to them. So, and then maybe you give them a 5% discount of that price. So what you have is 100 plus 20% minus 5%. And that number is getting calculated in the real time, which for ERP is not a problem, right? If there is a CFO or some person in finance or even operating salesperson operating out of ERP on a daily basis, they're probably recognizing what they're doing on a day-to-day basis. So not a big deal, right? Because how many people are logged into ERP at any given point in time? And every one of them is only looking at one or two products. You can do that with a website. You typically list dozens of products on a product listing page, and you don't know which one of the customer is going to click on, but they expect to see the price, speaking of the B2C experiences in B2B. So you have to calculate a customer specific price for dozens of products in a minute. And you have to replicate all of that logic online for hundreds of thousands of SKUs. So all of a sudden, something that was pretty logical in ERP becomes very difficult in e-commerce context. And if your pricing changes unpredictably, your customer got moved to a different tier. Maybe they're now in part of a different customer segment, or maybe your supplier has changed the pricing for you, which automatically moves the price for 50,000 SKUs. You have to push all of that momentarily to your website. How easy is that? So over-engineered integrations are being built as a result of that, and they're costly. And very few teams are able to get them right the first time. So don't discount the complexity of your pricing, audit it. And sometimes I've seen the businesses actually simplifying the pricing to support digital commerce because they realize that this complexity doesn't really power their business. It doesn't give them a whole lot of benefit.
Yeah, absolutely. So in that case, would you say it would benefit, these B2B leaders or someone who's looking at a new e-commerce system to look for a system that can, maybe handle a little bit of that pricing, remove that off of the ERP a little bit and be able to do that kind of natively within the e-commerce system itself?
I definitely would. This is, again, all about the business rules and the business processes adopted by the company. ERP is really the heart and soul of a B2B business, 99% of the time. Many of them are really old, and it's almost scary to touch them. And they were not built for the internet age, right? So integrating directly into the ERP becomes extremely difficult, sometimes not outright impossible, but not worth the hassle. So if you implement the pricing logic and inventory logic outside of the ERP, and that platform is actually built for internet, for e-commerce, and solves for a lot of that integration-based complexity and allows the real-time lookups of the pricing. It solves a tremendous amount of complexity and accelerates your time to market dramatically.
Yeah, and that totally makes sense. It's ERPs are great, right? And they're kind of like you said, the necessary, like the backbone of the function, I think, of the entire B2B, process, right? And I think you've stated prior that it's the core around which everything else orbits, right? Switching gears a little bit because we're kind of heading down that ERP path. And I kind of want to discuss that a little bit further because obviously it makes sense to have ERPs involved for the financial transactions and everything that you mentioned, right? And it starts to not make sense sometimes when you get into things like real-time inventory, right? Where you've got to be able to maintain that in a real-time status instead of doing batch calls or things like that. But also when we get into things like order management, right? So you also make the argument that there's a point when an OMS makes sense, more sense than an ERP. Can you expand on that a little bit?
Absolutely. ERPs are fundamentally accounting systems. They're built for the CFO, the VP of finance, and they're meant to be very precise, but not necessarily very quick. And a lot of things that happen in e-commerce, they require very rapid response and on big batches of data. So that alone is a challenge for many of the ERP systems. They are not meant for performance in computational sense of word. So if you have a large catalog and you have multiple warehouses and you have a lot of inventory movement and you have a lot of price movement, and you ship out a lot of orders for which you need to provide shipping tracking information and all of those details. I mean, every single thing that I listed, and it's not even an exhaustive list, that's what comprises a great B2B customer experience. You miss out on one part, the whole experience is ruined. Because you give them the wrong price, because you oversell them and you actually don't have the product, but they count on having it. That's a disastrous thing for your relationship with that particular buyer. And B2B buyers, they're high value buyers, right? Their lifetime value is huge, often in the millions of dollars. So it's important to get all of those things done right. And instead of trying to modernize your ERP, which just sounds outright scary for a lot of people, I think I heard the statistic. That's the biggest reason for CFOs getting fired or even CEOs getting terminated. Like it's difficult to be successful with that mission. So instead of trying to do that, introduce again the purpose-built system, your inventory visibility, your pick, pack, and ship convenience. It is your custom pricing, inability to sync that price, tracking everybody's possibly credit balances. Have they maxed out on their net terms credit line? Things like that. They really streamline the business without jeopardizing the complexity and the reliability of the ERP.
Yeah, that absolutely makes sense. And there's a couple things that you touched upon there that I also want to expand on with the OMS kind of outside of the ERP discussion here. We both know, and I think most people would say that they know that B2B orders are, notoriously complex, right? Like you've mentioned, split shipments, multiple warehouses, approval workflows. How do you balance the need for automation, right? Um, being able to fulfill orders, kind of in a zero touch way, right? Kind of automate that order fulfillment with the need for human oversight, especially for like high value accounts.
So if your tool supports the automation capabilities, such as the workflows triggered when an order meets certain criteria, for example, it's a multi-warehouse fulfillment, or it's a high value order, or it's a very heavy product, or maybe it is a customer that's already in a particular segment you want to watch carefully. Um, you may want to hold the order and have a human review it. And it's not unheard of to review manually every single order that comes in. There's nothing wrong about it. It depends on what types of orders you're dealing with, how much workforce you have for that. And then again, the degree and the depth of that human review can also vary because, especially now with AI, you can absolutely train AI to audit the orders and then flag them for humans to make the final decision. So there's a lot of things that can be done if you have that modern tool. And again, that's where ERPs, they were just not designed for that. And many of them are just way too old to even support anything AI related. So when you have a modern tool, you can uncover a lot of efficiencies operationally and free up your resources for more meaningful work that requires a human.
Yeah, totally agree. I would think, the basis of it would be very strong kind of order sourcing, order routing rules in the first place to kind of help with that initial automation. I'm glad you touched on the AI piece because I was actually going to follow up on this with where you're at with AI, but obviously you see that as a very helpful piece that's coming along. We agree. We're adding a lot of the AI stuff on the back end to help out with that, especially with things like order routing, order sourcing, to make sure that everything is going where it should be. I mean, obviously you can have an AI to help you write these sourcing rules and routing rules, but I think one of the more important pieces is when order routing makes a decision on something, can it back it up and explain why it did that? So how important do you think like the explainability piece of AI is going to be moving forward for things like order routing, order sourcing, or kind of any of the other back end stuff that it's doing, right? Because we could sit here and talk for the next 3 hours about all of the different things that AI is capable of, right? Creating maybe discounts on the fly, or a lot of these other things that it's going to be able to do. But I think this kind of order routing, order sourcing, and the explainability of everything behind that is super important. But I kind of want to gauge where you're at with that.
Explainability of AI is just a fundamental problem with AI and neural networks in general, and being able to hold someone accountable, or at least understand what happened and why, is crucial. So I'd say yes, as a part of setting up AI, and we need to probably discuss a very specific use case, but you may want it not just to make a particular decision, but also create a log record explaining the rationale behind it. So first of all, that creates the paper trail to make adjustments to the decision-making process of that model. Because AI, if we're going to touch on that topic, also tends to drift over time, which means it tends to reinforce its certain behaviors and then sort of drifts off the original course a little too much, and something needs to steer it back to the normal course. When you have the data points, you understand that it consistently makes wrong decisions based on certain criteria. You're actually capable of easily and early making that course correction.
Yeah, and that's probably the most important piece, right? Is to course correct, but also give AI very strict guidelines on what it can and can't do, so that it doesn't start to freak out or hallucinate, or we're finding kind of the same thing where if you give it very strict guidelines, it's very helpful in what it can do. So I want to shift gears a little bit because there's a couple other important topics that are very kind of B2B specific, search being one of them, right? So search seems to be that kind of make or break feature for B2B, right? Why would simple keyword matching, which works fine for like a t-shirt shop or something like that, be completely inadequate for a distributor with say like 800,000 to a million to 2 million SKUs?
Honestly, even if you have like 10,000 SKUs, that's already inadequate. Think of the last time you tried to purchase auto parts, because this is not a B2B, but that's very relatable. Say windshield wipers. Not all of them are compatible, and certainly they had come in different sizes. And most of the vehicles do not require they have asymmetrical windshield wiper blades. So one of them is wider than the other. How many people know of that? How many of us know what exact size I need for my vehicle? I know just because, well, I had to buy one lately. Uh, but this is the reality of what happens in the B2B buying experience all day long. It's all about the fitment for a specific purpose and actually knowing the right word for the right thing. And it's almost unrealistic for a human being to possess that level of knowledge, how to formulate that search query. It makes it very difficult to search for anything based on the keywords. And if you try to overload your product descriptions with too much data, most likely the search will return a lot of noise, meaning irrelevant search results. So we want to almost humanize the search. A good example would be, say we're looking for something that's green. We want to buy green products. Well, for somebody it's green, for others it's emerald. Especially, let's imagine we're buying beauty products where they have a lot of funny names for different shades of colors, right? So it could be turquoise, it could be emerald, it could be green, it could be you name it, right? So AI can actually relate all of those things together based on a color in return without a keyword match. Then you have long serial numbers where it's very easy to make a typo. Or the exact same part has been historically known under several different code names. Or you remember the general purpose of something, but you don't know the right technological term for it. I can give you so many different scenarios when, as a human, I should be forgiven, but yet keyword search is just extremely unforgiving. And what happens? If you're lucky and you have a loyal customer, they pick up the phone and call. But if you want to have your sales team get off the phone with this kind of consulting that's not, I mean, it's out of necessity rather than driving net new sales, you want to have a very capable natural language search. And I would also add image search because a lot of buying can occur by just snapping a picture of the failed part. Hey, I need a replacement for this.
Yeah, well, you don't even really think about that, right? Taking a picture of something and saying, "Hey, can you go find this piece or this parts," and having it go do it. That would be huge, right? I mean, I agree with you that the natural language search is great. I think it's even more important for B2B than it is for B2C. And, I think on the B2C side, everybody's kind of content with searching for, red shoes or, there's not a whole lot of, maybe big practical use cases. There probably are, and I'm not thinking of it right off the top of my head, but, we're very used to kind of searching for things in that way. So being able to search in a natural language and say, it fits on these pieces and it's a connector for this, or, when you're not quite sure what it is, or yeah, the very long part numbers, they are, they can get out there for sure. So some great points there. Back to the B2B buyer, one of the other points that you make is that you noted that B2B buyers will often pay 15% more or more than that to work with a trusted supplier. So how do you digitize trust, right? What features within a commerce kind of platform that a B2B company is going to use or they're looking to use, what like viewing order history or easy ordering, how is that going to signal to a buyer that you understand their business?
Uh, it's not about technology. That's the very important thing that often is overlooked. Technology is just a way of delivering that trust and value to the customer. So it's all of those things that we talked about. It's correct and reliable pricing, correct and reliable real-time inventory information. It's customer knowing that the product descriptions are very complete, that the website is easy to navigate and search, that shipping times are predictable, that the shipping costs are predictable. Everything's predictable. Basically, if I am in B2B business, I'm not buying for myself. I'm buying to make a living. If I'm a contractor, let's say, and I have a project, that if that project stalls because I do not have that part, I'm losing money right there. If I'm manufacturing, or maybe I'm a retailer, I don't have products to put on the shelves. So I'm also losing money right there. So to me, the reliability and dependability at every single step of the way is crucial. And I think a lot of people would rather overpay a little bit, but never have their businesses interrupted. So I wouldn't specifically call out anything, but definitely price and inventory tends to come up more often than the other components. But it doesn't mean that those are the only two things that you should be focusing on.
Yeah, absolutely. And I totally agree. The pricing consistency is one, and we kind of touched on that a little bit. I'm glad you brought inventory up. It was something I thought about earlier. And of course it went away. That the brain at my age is just isn't what it used to be, Dmitry. But I'm glad you circled back to it. Inventory visibility, right, is often one of the biggest friction points for anybody, right? Not just B2B, but B2C. But B2B with the quantities that businesses can be ordering, like there's got to be visibility into that inventory within real time, which we talked about, right? A lot of B2B businesses out there will use ERP, and then you're not really getting kind of that up to date or up to the minute kind of inventory visibility. So how do companies solve the available to promise problem when their inventory, again, is scattered over all those different locations that we were talking about, 3PLs, physical stores, drop shippers. So how are they able to solve for being able to see all of that inventory that's available to promise, available to sell, kind of in one location?
Well, lots of different approaches depending on how the business operates. If you are only selling your own inventory, definitely invest in a good warehouse management system. Order management system can have that warehousing module, so it's probably two for the price of one. Then, if you really depend on the drop shipping or just somebody else's third party inventory, try to integrate with them. Knowing that certain inventory is not yours and you're not getting it in the real time, try to establish certain thresholds, certain buffers that if the third party inventory drops below a certain level, it becomes, hey, call us or quote instead of order now button. So, quotation is actually a very powerful mechanism. If we think about it, a lot of things that happen on the B2B websites are really quote requests. And a lot of negotiation, as we started our conversation, happens post order placement. As long as the customer can initiate this conversation, you can get back to them and offer them a substitution. You can offer them split shipment. You can offer them something else, maybe a discount for the wait time. Uh, it's really all over the place. But first of all, try never to get in the position that you've overpromised on the inventory you do not have.
Absolutely. And I think that's the critical piece. Inventory is one of those weird things that can, to your point, live kind of on the commerce side, but it can also live in the order management side. And, for those of those those businesses out there that have very, complex fulfillment networks, a WMS is, makes total sense to look into. I feel like inventory, happens a little bit more upstream than a WMS. A WMS would help, kind of with the fulfillment issues and things like that. But if you've got an OMS out there that can, kind of handle a lot of those critical points that you just mentioned, right? Being able to, a fulfillment obviously for splitting shipment, but for substitutions, you can notice that kind of a little bit even further upstream. That can happen even during order, an order placement, right? You can know, hey, we're short on this inventory. We can offer you substitution at this point, right? Or giving them the opportunity. Being able to see into future inventory, I think is huge as well, right? So if you're a manufacturer, when you know you're going to have this ready to go, or even if you're not, you're just a distributor, when are you getting these, kind of inventory units in? And then when can you be able to promise those back out? Do you also think it's important, for B2B companies out there that are looking at commerce and order management to be able to, kind of prioritize their accounts, right? So, and what I mean by that is, you've got like your top tier accounts that you want to make sure they're always getting their stuff and getting it on time. And then you've got kind of your mid tier and then maybe your lower tier where you're like, it'd be great, but honestly, if push comes to shove, they're not going to get there. It's like, is there an automation built around that would be super important to prioritize those buyer accounts?
I personally didn't get a chance to automate that kind of logic because it tends to happen exactly where you're saying in order management systems.
Yeah.
But I think that happens a lot, and it makes a lot of sense, right? You can't treat everyone equally if you have such a high degree of complexity in business. So those routing mechanisms, those inventory availability, or being able to override inventory that has already been reserved for somebody else is crucial, because otherwise you're going to be stuck in such a tremendous amount of manual work. It's going to bury you. And I think it is underappreciated how much the expectations has shifted. Actually, going back to the original point, B2C versus B2B. B2C expectations are often on the promptness of the response, incorrectness of that response. Previously, people were okay to wait for sometimes days for those answers. Now we're anxious not to get back the information in 30 minutes and a couple of hours, maybe at the most. So free yourself up through automation to make those decisions, or at least prepare the decision for final approval by the human. So definitely invest in that kind of automation. And by the way, order forecasting is one of those things.
Yeah,
I'm sorry,
absolutely.
inventory forecasting. Sorry, mis worded that.
But I mean, yeah, inventory forecasting is huge. And I knew where you were going with that. That's why I jumped right in, was just like, that's absolutely huge. You're right. We didn't even mention that, but that is another huge piece of that, to be able to forecast that inventory. So you've got kind of a better idea of where you're at with all that. And there's that automation piece kind of jumping out again, right? Obviously, automation's a huge part of that. There's one thing that you mentioned in your blog that I wanted to point out, because I loved it. I think it's very, very great advice. It was your, one of your practical actions, right? Is to go out and talk to operations teams before you're talking to developers, right? So you're looking to put together, your commerce, your OMS, your WMS, ERP, whatever it is, your full tech stack. You really want to get out and talk to the people that are going to be using this more so than the people are going to be implementing it, right? So what is one specific insight you've gained from, say a warehouse manager, finance rep, somebody like that, that has completely changed or at least altered a digital project that you were working on?
I heard from people responsible for pricing standing up in front of the CEO and saying that's not how it works, and literally saving the day because they were able to explain and show that the pricing model is different and it has additional significant complexity to it because they had some exception override rules, for example, which accounted for probably 25% of total revenue. The logic related to inventory being reserved, inventory available to promise, and how to show it on the website. Uh, there were a lot of great examples. So, to your point, start with the end in mind. If you start talking to IT about integrating all the various great tools out there, you're likely to run into a lot of issues and just delay things at a high cost because technology comes last when you know where you're going and how you're going to be using those tools. Ask the people who will be using them, who know how the business runs, help them prioritize that functionality, then pick the tools based on the functionality you're looking for, not the other way around. And then you can build a blueprint on how to integrate those tools.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. I think those are absolutely great points, and why you need to be kind of bringing in people more so than the developers, right? Developers are great, and they're going to help you, pinpoint some of that digital pain. But really, is this solving the pain points within the business, and is it solving them in the right way, right? So I think those are all really, really good points. There's a couple more questions I want to get into, and they're pretty quick hitters to meet you. So hopefully we'll get through them pretty quickly here. But we talked about at the very beginning, or at least I did, anyways. Talked about the fax machine kind of refusing to die. If we are looking in your crystal ball right now, 10 years from now, do you think B2B commerce will finally be 100% digital? Is it ever going to be 100% digital? Or are there always going to be some sort of kind of hybrid element to the way that B2B commerce operates?
I think it will never be 100% digital. It's the world is not black and white. And in B2B, again, so much depends on this personal relationship. Now, there is a lot of talk about AI avatars replacing the humans, but the whole idea is that those avatars are that good, they're almost human-like, right? So maybe in that sense, it will at some point, we will be 100% digital without even fully realizing it. But reality is, we need some reassurance. We need additional clarification because the table stakes are way higher. We're not spending several dozen or several $100s on a personal purchase. We're spending tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars sometimes. So certain validations and clarifications need to occur. And that typically happens through email, through phone calls. Uh, but you can certainly reduce the burden on the humans by digitizing everything.
Yeah, yeah, totally agree. Totally agree. I don't think I like that you said we don't live in a black and white world, right? We really don't, and there's always going to be some of this aspect of clarification when you're dealing with highly technical products, right? And making sure that everything is working the way it should. So there's always going to be, that need for clarification and follow up. And so Completely agree. You know, I think we'd be remiss not to mention that, yeah, you know, obviously we think digitization of this has its, you know, has its place for sure, but it's never going to be 100%. So, one last question here, Dmitry, and again, I'd also be remiss in not asking this. If we've got a B2B leader that's sitting through this webinar right now, or you know is catching it later online, and they're realizing they're making, you know, a couple of these mistakes or several, or maybe they're making all of the mistakes that we've talked about or that are mentioned in your blog, because we definitely didn't touch on all of them. What is the one thing, and if you've got more than one thing, obviously that's okay, but what is the one thing they should do tomorrow morning to start fixing it, if not today?
I'll repeat myself, honestly. Speak to your sales team and speak to your customers, especially most valued or the ones that have stopped working with you recently. What has upset them? What are the pain points? And don't take their answers literally. Uh, think and look a couple of layers deep below the surface, because sometimes people are too nice, or they ask for the same thing that you know, they sometimes don't have the vocabulary to explain their needs. But identify where the opportunity lies. Uh, just building a beautiful website does not solve a whole lot of problems, certainly not in B2B. Because to drive the customers to the website, you need to have your sales teams buy in. A typical response by most salespeople is to see digital commerce as a competition, as a threat to their commissions. They should be incentivized to drive the traffic to the website. So we're now talking about human perception and psychology. We're not even talking about commerce at all. But if you're not reassuring your sales team that they're going to be fine with this new digital commerce channel, you're nuking the entire digital commerce program right there. They will find ways to divert people to continue placing the orders directly with them through email or phone, right? So talk to sales, talk to customers, and make sure those two personas are happy.
Awesome. Fantastic. Dmitry, thank you so much for your time today. Again, I encourage everyone to go read his blog on our website at kibocommerce.com and really dig into the 9 problems he's got there, the 9 mistakes that B2B companies typically make, because it's fantastic information. Even if you think you know 20 of them, I guarantee you there's 1 or 2 of them on there that you're like, yeah, that's a good point. But also kind of the solutions around that. So again, Dmitry, thank you so much for your time today. I appreciate having you, and we'll speak again soon.
Thank you very much for having me, and have a great day.